my No Cap crew friends, Walter Clapp and Roger Scott. Guys, we had a pretty good weekend. Did you guys get caught in the snow, or was that just me? No?
Is like no snow on the ground in DC. I'm still here in DC, as you may be able to tell. I'm in a hotel room. Was on the Capitol Hill today, meeting with some folks, and yeah, there was like it was very threatened. I think they got a lot of snow up in New York, where um, our good friend Todd, our special guest today, is. Todd, do you have a bunch of snow on the ground?
We do have a bunch of snow on the ground. I think we got around 12 to 18 inches. But I
Wow.
have been in my fifth floor apartment, not on the ground most of the day. So it is okay with me.
Roger, how did you fare driving back through the snow? You're on mute, buddy.
Hey, that's better. Uh, I was surprised it didn't take longer than 6 hours. The snow in the DC, Northern Virginia, leaving DC was the heaviest. It was sticking to the embankments and the guardrails and so forth. Further south, it wasn't sticking as much, but still, you were driving. It was like driving through what did they call it? Warp speed on Star Trek. You go into the star, right?
Hmm.
You see all that snow coming at you. But the worst part of the trip was the wind. Once I got to North Carolina, it was dry here, a non-event in terms of precipitation, but the wind was horrible.
Yeah, I drove home as well, but I just didn't have as far to drive. I got an
Yeah.
hour. I got home and it's like coming down. The visibility wasn't great, so like I was kind of glad I left when I did. So in case I guess it didn't really get much worse, but my I got home and my wife was like, "What do you want to do about the office tomorrow?" This is like right after a text message by Prince William County Schools that put a 2 hour delay on. She's like, "What do you want to do about the office?" And I was like, "Wait and see if anything sticks to the ground first." And and she's like, "Okay." And then like an hour later, we got a text message, "Schools are closed." And she's like, "What do you want to do about the office?" And I was like, "Still wait until we see if anything sticks to the ground." And then so we waited and nothing stuck to the ground. So our kids stayed home from school today and we had to go to the office.
Ooh, the best kind of snow day.
Yeah, I'm sure the kids loved it. But let enough of that banter about the weekend weather, which never was, or at least wasn't for us. It was for our guest tonight, Todd Dresner. Thank you so much for joining us. Todd wrote a very intriguing piece on Substack about the 14th Amendment, and it's right up our alley. So I sent an email as soon as I read it, and I said, "Would you be on the show and talk about this?" And he said yes, and we're just super excited. Todd, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So go ahead and explain your piece just a little bit to our audience so they can like have an understanding. And then I know like Walter's going to pepper you with a whole bunch of like lawyerly questions. So I'm just going to sit back and watch afterwards.
Okay, so the piece is about Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, and what we talk about most of the time when we talk about the 14th Amendment is Section 1, which of course is about due process and birthright citizenship and those sorts of things. But the framers put in several other sections which were very important to them. And Section 2, I will just read how it starts out. And it says that representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state. And, it's not obvious maybe right away from that language, but what that does is abolish the three-fifths compromise from the original Constitution, where the enslaved people in the southern states were counted, three-fifths of their population was counted towards representation and giving the southern states more representation in Congress. So that clause abolishes that, and now we're going to count everybody in states. And the Republicans, who were in power at the time, who had won the Civil War, realized something when they made that change, which was that if the former Confederates in the southern states came back into power and they prevented the newly freed black people from voting, then what would happen is the South would rejoin the Union and they would get more representatives in Congress than they had had before the Civil War, because now we're counting their full population rather than having 3/5 compromise. And the Republicans did not want that to happen, obviously. They had won the Civil War. They wanted to ensure that the freed people could vote, and not incidentally, that the Republicans would stay in power. But at the time, they didn't have the votes they felt to pass what later became the 15th Amendment, which just said that you can't prohibit the right to vote on the basis of race. So they came up with this rather convoluted formula, which is the rest of Section 2, which basically, boiled down to plain English, says a state can do whatever it wants. It can deny or abridge the right to vote to any citizen for any reason, but there is a penalty associated with doing so. And the penalty is, let's say a state denies the right to vote to 10% of its citizens. Then when we count up the population of the state to figure out how many representatives it will have in Congress, we cut that population by 10%. So if the state has 1 million people, but they're denying the right to vote to 10% of their citizens, we only count 900,000. And as a result of that, if that was applied, a state could wind up with fewer representatives in the House than it would otherwise be entitled to. So that was the idea that they had. And they tried in the 1870 census, which is the first census after the amendment was passed, to enforce this. They had census takers go out and ask people, has your right to vote been abridged? And they came back and they realized that their data was completely unreliable. So basically, ever since then, Section 2 has just sort of been sitting in the Constitution and not been applied. And I am making a documentary about all this, which follows a contemporary attempt to finally get it applied. But I'll stop there and see if you have any questions about what I've said so far.
You're on mute.
I frame the documentary for everyone, and then I think I'll step in with some questions. But it sounds like you're following a lawyer named Jared, who has filed some litigation, and but I don't know if you just want to set the stage, kind of a trailer. I'll just recommend to folks, if they want to go check it out, it's at 14section2film.com. And that's all spelled out, FOURTEEN section2film.com, and they can go watch the trailer. But just, I don't know if you want to set the stage a little bit, and then we'll get into some questions.
Yeah, so as you said, a lawyer named Jared Pettinato was listening to a podcast, actually, and someone sort of offhandedly mentioned Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, and he didn't know about it, so he did some research on it. And he has a nonprofit organization called Citizens for Constitutional Integrity, which is trying to, as the name implies, make the Constitution work better and bring litigation to help that happen. And so he decided to, on behalf of his clients, who are citizens of states that lost a representative in the last census, to sue the United States Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is now responsible for obviously totaling the population of each state and figuring out how many representatives it should have in the House. And Jared's lawsuit, again, to boil it down to plain English, basically says, hey, Section 2 is in the Constitution. It's never been repealed. The Constitution is the highest law in the land. You, the Census Bureau, have to follow what Section 2 says. And so the film follows that lawsuit and simultaneously goes into a little of the history I was talking about, just to explain what Section 2 was, why it's never been enforced, and finally, what does that tell us about our constitutional system? Obviously, we're feeling some strain in various parts of the Constitution these days, and this story of Section 2, is it a quirk? Is it a canary in the coal mine in some way? What does it mean that we have this clause sitting there that's never been enforced and everybody is sort of okay with that? So those are the three disparate parts of the film that hopefully come together in a coherent story.
That's great. And so do you have any idea on a release date when fans might want to check back? I know this is a tough question
Yes.
for filmmakers.
Yes, it is. I'm hoping to be close to a finished cut later this year. I don't know whether it'll actually be released this year. It would be ideal to come out with before the midterm elections. I'm not sure I'm going to make that, but I'm hopeful that it'll be getting out there more widely either late this year or sometime next year.
Okay. Well, I think it is timely, because we're leading up to the 2030 census, as you may be aware. I think it is actually really good timing for you to be making a movie about something about the Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. It's all about a census, right? And the census, as I was talking today on the Hill with a staffer about the census, right? It's a fascinating topic and timely piece, and so that's exciting. So I'm interested. You said after the 1870 census, was it tested? Did it go to the courts? You said that it hasn't been enforced before, but have other people tried before, Jared?
Yeah, there have been some cases. There was actually sort of just one guy, an individual who found out about Section 2, and he brought a suit, and I think I would have to ask Jared for more details, but I think he just declined to pay his taxes. He wanted to get himself arrested so he could give himself legal standing to bring a suit about Section 2. That didn't really go anywhere. Perhaps a little more significantly, I was very lucky to find someone who's in the film who participated in a lawsuit in 1965 and argued a Section 2 case for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And his name is Michael Meltzner. He went on to do many amazing things. He represented Muhammad Ali when Ali was arguing his conscientious objector case. He's represented a lot of causes like that, but he worked for 10 years after being hired by Thurgood Marshall at the Legal Defense Fund, and they filed a case. And the film goes into this a little, but basically that case ended when the judges said, we have this new thing that we just got called the Voting Rights Act. Let's see how that goes. And if it doesn't go well, come back to us. And for a long time, the Voting Rights Act went pretty well. But now, obviously, that some of it has already been dismantled and more of it is in danger of being dismantled. So I think Jared is sort of picking up that baton a little bit from Michael Meltzner and trying to bring a case that's really relevant to what's going on now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Do you know who Michael sued? Like, who was the defendant in his lawsuit?
It was a case against the United States. I don't know if it was
U.S.
against,
but against I'm thinking about the branch. Was it against the Census Bureau or Congress?
Yeah, I don't know. I know he had clients in states that would potentially lose representatives. Those would be the southern states, and he had clients in states that would potentially gain representatives.
Okay. So still this idea that every census, we're trading representatives, right? Which is one of our big complaints. I mean, we talk about this all the time with folks. Very interesting. Okay. So this is just for the listeners. There's a couple really good pieces called The Subjects and Objects of the Constitution. Actually, one is The Subjects of the Constitution, and then another piece is called Objects of the Constitution. It's by my constitutional law professor. You can find him online for free. His name is Nicholas Rosenkrantz, Rosenkrantz. And I think they're some of the most important pieces of literature for understanding the Constitution and the limits to constitutional interpretation that the Supreme Court has taken, right? Like, they may have gotten it wrong some of the times, that's for sure, right? I think one of the things we're all grappling with. But one of what it asks, which I think is interesting, is how in any given sentence, what is the description, what's the object of the sentence, and what is the subject of the sentence, right? So we have actors who do things in sentences, which is kind of a unique point. And if you observe the Constitution, what you'll notice is that if you go to Article 1, it's very clear, right? Congress is the one who is supposed to be doing the action, right? It's all about Congress doing these different things. And although in some sentences it's kind of maybe talking about the states or, different people, but you get to Article 2, and that's certainly about the president, right? The executive power is in the president. And then Article 3, it's all about the judges, right? Well, you get to the amendments, and the drafters, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, hadn't thought about the subjects and objects of the Constitution, and so sometimes it's vague, right? It's like, and you get to if you read the language of the 14th Amendment, Section 2, it is unclear. There is no subject really who is doing the action. It just says representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. But it doesn't say by who. Who's supposed to do that? And it's a bit of a quandary. And so you get to the second sentence of Section 2, which is where you're supposed to have your population reduced if you enact Jim Crow laws. Well, we all know they enacted Jim Crow laws, and nothing happened, right? They had to pass the Civil Rights Act, and so you can ask a question like, well, maybe that was the enabling legislation for this, portion of the amendment. But on the other hand, maybe we just haven't sued the right person. Is one question that I would love to ask Jared. If you can connect us. So kind of going back to Jared, he's got another suit planned, and that's part of the drama that you're kind of wrapping up in this film. I know you can't talk too much about it because we don't want to reveal too much, but if there's anything you want to talk about, kind of the future plans there, feel free to chime in.
Sure. Well, I mean, what you're saying about the language of the amendment has been relevant to the film because, as you say, the amendment does say the population shall be reduced, and the interpretation of shall in legal circles, my understanding is that that is an obligation that is mandatory. But you're also right that it doesn't say who shall reduce it. And so in this case, what's happening is that Jared is saying to the Census Bureau, well, Congress has delegated to you the responsibility to figure out how many representatives each state has, so therefore you shall do it. And the Census Bureau is saying, no, we just count people, and the law that delegates delegates responsibility to us tells us to count the entire population. Now, to me, that's a bit of a dodge. There's no reason that you can't count the entire population and then also figure out how many people's right to vote is being abridged. But the question sort of revolves around, is the Census Bureau the right part of the government to figure out voting abridgments and denials? Of course, we all know that the 14th Amendment in Section 5 empowers Congress to pass any legislation it wants to enforce the amendment. So Congress, a very different Congress than we have now, but Congress could decide we're going to enforce Section 2 and we're going to set up a new agency that's going to figure out the voting abridgments and denials. They could do that. In the absence of that, the question of the case is like, the Census Bureau obviously has this responsibility. Don't they have to follow the Constitution? Just because it's never been enforced doesn't mean that it shouldn't be enforced. It's there. So if we are committed to the Constitution as the supreme law of the land, don't we have an obligation to do something about it? That's really the question that Jared is trying to ask in court.
Well, yeah, but we violate that stuff all the time. Even when we have clear enforcement mechanisms, we often don't enforce it, and not just the Constitution, but law. TikTok recently, and the Epstein files, and however many dozens of indictments against the current president that were in the past. But I have a question for the. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, and Walter and Jeff have heard me go on about this before. Congress itself ratified a treaty, the Treaty of New Echota in 1835 with the Cherokee, and it entitles the Cherokee to a delegate in Congress. But the language in the document says, whenever Congress shall make provision, right? And they didn't, and they haven't. And it's been going on 200 years now. So there's another example of just what you were talking about, where maybe what we need is a registered agent of Congress, right? We have an executive, we have a chief justice, we need a registered agent for Congress, so we have somebody to serve due process on. But I have a question for attorneys in the room. Do our peer nations, the other mature democracies of the world, do they have anywhere near the difficulty interpreting and enforcing their constitution? I mean, we have an entire branch of the legal profession here that earns a very good living arguing about the Constitution. My sense is other countries don't do this. They don't have this kind of difficulty. Am I wrong?
So being the only attorney in the room, I unfortunately do not know, or I'm not all that familiar with, the enabling kind of question in other jurisdictions. I'm most familiar with America, and my international law is pretty rusty, unfortunately. I did, however, read, or I'm in the process of reading. I'm about 3/4 of the way from Becoming Nations again, it's a great look at sovereignty on tribal nations and representation in tribal nations in Congress over time, and it actually talks about the treaty, the Treaty of New Echota in here, Roger. And one of the interesting things is there were like two factions, I think, of the tribe and they there was this question of authority. I think in part, or one of the arguments is there's a question of authority of did one person or not?
The 500
had the authority to sign for
the others. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because it's kind of like when you decide that you're going to start a corporation or a nonprofit, sometimes you just like show up in a room and you just write the rules, right? Mm-hmm. And the same is true with a government, right? I mean, in some ways, they were just showing up in a room and writing a document that they were agreeing to abide by, and a lot of it was kind of the pleasantries and the niceties that you see in the Senate still today. But it's obviously being tested. It's being put under strain, right? That's what we're seeing. That's what we saw in the lead up to the Civil Rights Act, certainly, right? Post-Civil War. And, there is, there's no doubt that, immigration, as Jeff points out all the time, slavery and immigration are at the heart of the 1929 Permanent Apportionment Act, which we talk about a lot.
So let me jump in here. I wanted to ask Todd, just out of curiosity. So the 14th Amendment is written by John Bingham, right? He was the core principal author of that. His intention was to extend the Bill of Rights to all people of the states. So I'm just curious, have you guys dug into like his diaries or like any of his notes to try to find some explanation for that to help your case?
Well, there's obviously the Congressional Globe, and Jared has read a lot of that, all of the arguments that were being made at the time that Section 2 passed. And the interesting thing I think about the case is like the government does not dispute anything about what Section 2 says. It's the language is a bit convoluted, but once you read it and understand it, it's very clear what the intent is here. It's not like some provisions of the Constitution where it's ambiguous, the way Roger was saying. Like, it is clear what they wanted to happen. It's not clear who they wanted to make it happen. But the case is interesting in that way because most of the time when you have two different sides, there is some difference of interpretation. And the only difference here is that the Census Bureau says, yeah, that's there, but we don't have to do it, which is part of what got me interested in it, making a film about it, because it's just so unusual, I think. There are lots of laws where we don't follow it exactly or things like that, but this is a constitutional amendment, which is supposed to be different. So yeah, I mean, Jared has definitely referred to what the framers, Bingham, Thaddeus Stevens, others said, but to some extent, like, the government is like, yes, we agree, they said it, and we don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I guess
Well, I think there's still this question of who, right? The subject
Right,
of the
right.
amendment. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I guess I was just hopeful. I'm kind of a history nerd, and I was hoping that maybe you guys found a nugget of history that I hadn't heard about, just in while you were studying it, right? Like if something had completely different, be like, yeah, we did, and we found this great little nugget. I was
Yes.
hoping, to find a little surprise.
For Jared's purposes, those great nuggets are helpful to him. For my purposes, because there was no film moving pictures in 1868, it's hard for me to work it into the documentary.
True.
Yeah. So you had your last documentary was like got picked up by PBS and published widely. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And so have you met Ken Burns? I feel like that's a silly question, but
I have not met Ken Burns. He, I think, is probably the only documentary filmmaker who's not affected by the PBS funding cuts. He just keeps going. I mean, that's not entirely true. PBS, despite the funding cuts, is going to keep going. And in fact, they may need
that's good to hear.
more programming from independent producers than they did before because they may not have the money themselves to produce their own programming. So it is an opportunity for filmmakers to get their work out there, and I encourage anyone listening who is interested in independent film, independent documentary, support your PBS station so that they can keep going and bring Ken Burns, God bless him, but he'll always get his work on the air. We don't have to worry about Ken Burns,
Yeah.
but there are lots of other people making really interesting stuff that can be seen on PBS too, and that hopefully people will support.
My kids love PBS Kids. It's like their favorite thing on their tablets.
Well, here's my question: could we not form a freestanding corporation for public broadcasting that has nothing to do with the federal government, and have that serve the same purpose it always did? They would be missing some government funding, but they might be able to make it up, somehow with other big donations on a national scale. A public benefit corporation kind of a situation.
Right. Yeah, I think stations are probably talking about that. Stations are certainly talking, and the interesting question for me as a filmmaker, like my last film, PBS has very strict standards about who can fund your film and what if you get any underwriters. That part before a PBS film, this program is made possible by. Those people have to be disclosed. They can't influence the content of the film, all of which good stuff. I think it's good, but the reason that it was there is because it was public airwaves, publicly funded, and I don't see any reason that they would drop it. But they may have some flexibility now because they're not receiving public funds to.
Well, they would still be
Take a slightly
broadcasting
different-
over public airwaves, so they'd still have to abide like any other broadcaster. So they couldn't go too far off the rails.
But I mean, we're getting lots of opinion masquerading as news now, and we don't need more of that on PBS. But
Absolutely,
it may give them somewhat more flexibility in their programming. I don't know. It's an interesting question. What happens when a publicly funded corporation suddenly has no public funding?
It's my belief that the uncapped house is going to have member districts that are going to include or help provide much of the information that a PBS or an NPR would have in the past, but also help facilitate and ensure that those things continue. I think. Because obviously, we need a way to rebuild trust, and one of our fundamental beliefs is that it happens, in the House with an expanded and more responsive House of Representatives. And I'm deeply affected by all of this that we're talking about because my wife, as many of you know, is the news director of Wyoming Public Radio, which not only just got CPB cut, but also the state legislature right now is also trying to get rid of her station, along with a bunch of other things in the university. And it's it's going to be, I say there's always opportunity in difficulty, and I believe that to be true, but that doesn't make it not difficult.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. I think only a couple stations have actually completely shut down, and
Yeah.
a lot of them have received funding, more funding from private sources than they did before. So they're all committed to trying to keep going.
Yeah. It is. It's going to be interesting to see. Let's see. I commend to you that the piece, "The Subjects and Objects of the Constitution," Todd. If you haven't read it, you might want to talk to Professor Nick Rosenkrantz for your deal. He might be able to provide you some insights and Jared, for that matter. And I'd be happy to provide some info. The delegation of authority to the Census Bureau is the other thing that stuck out to me in what you were just talking about. And it's so much of the authority has been delegated, and what's interesting is it's an executive branch agency. And so the thing I want to pitch to Jared is, when he goes to, if he's filing another suit or whatever, I think we need to sue the Congress. I think you got to sue the Census Bureau and Congress, and maybe it's actually the congressional delegation from the states where the population is moving back and forth. Or the states themselves. Because I think, so one of the things that's interesting is if you look at Article 1, Section 2, which is what the amendment amends, right, everyone? So the 14th Amendment, Section 2 is amending, I think, yes, Article 1, Section 2, and it removes the 3/5 clause, as Todd said. However, what's interesting is, let's see. So it says at the end of it, it says the state. Okay, each state shall have at least one representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3. Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10. Jeff, you started off well. North Carolina 5. Not as well, Roger. South Carolina 5 and Georgia 3. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. Do you have any idea what who issues a writ of election to fill vacancies? Anyone?
Repeat the question.
Do any of you know? It says, when vacancies happen in the
Yep.
representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. So when somebody vacates a House seat, who appoints it? Does anyone know?
Is it saying appoints, or is it saying calls an election?
It's the governor of the state or some designee of the legislature in the state.
It says, shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. But don't we currently actually appoint somebody? Doesn't somebody get appointed in the interim of the election?
Yeah, we writ an appointment. We write it.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't prepare
Okay.
for this one.
That's
Sorry.
fine. That's fine. Well, it's something for us to dig into. Well, because what's interesting, right, is whoever issues those writs, right, that might be somebody that you want to consider suing, Todd, or sorry, Jared may want to consider suing. Is my thought. And then also it says, when you above that, when I was reading all the states, it's talking about the states having entitlement to choose their representatives. And I've long thought, what would happen if a state just elected more representatives than it was allocated and sent them to D.C.? What would happen? Who would send them home, right? Or who would refuse to seat them?
Yeah, but that's
go
not
ahead.
realistic right now because, well, number one, like it's not like states are competing against each other. Parties are competing against each other, which means
true.
there would be an internal Republican or Democratic Party that would basically be at war with itself, sending
Yeah.
more people than they can actually take. So, like, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting premise if things changed, but I don't think that's something that's going to happen right now.
So what I'm getting at though, right, is the subject's question, right? Like, if that were to happen in that extreme case, who would be in charge of saying no, right? Because that's kind of the person that I think this suit is against, or who is in charge of enforcing the 14th Amendment, Section 2. Maybe. This is just my argument. Anyway, I'll turn it back over. I don't know that I've got any more questions, Todd, but you're welcome to respond, or anyone else can jump in.
Well, before we move on, though, I'd like to point out that, Wyoming fared even worse because at the time they were entitled to choose 0 representatives. So North Carolina and Virginia came out on top.
Okay, yeah. You were correct. You were correct.
Yep. I mean, the idea of suing Congress is interesting. I don't know how that would work, but the whole issue of who is responsible, the other way that's come up here is like the penalty of Section 2 is a penalty against a state.
Right.
So if it was actually enforced and a state denied the right to vote to its citizens, the state could lose a representative. And the question in a lawsuit like Jared is bringing, where he has individual citizens as his clients, does the penalty that Section 2 would impose solve his client's legal injury? And my crash legal education making this documentary tells me that a court has to be able to do something to redress the injury that the client has. But if a client of Jared's didn't have the right to vote and a state lost a representative as a result, the client still wouldn't have voted. So that's like an interesting problem, and some of the scholars I've talked to have said basically Section 2 is set up as a mechanism to incentivize the state to allow people to vote, or if they don't, to punish the state. It's not about individuals, which suggests that maybe going after it the way Jared is doing is not going to work if that interpretation is true. But that interpretation is just one interpretation.
So
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so if the idea is the rights of the citizens to vote are infringed, and the punishment is they take away representation from the state, which the representation is not necessarily for the state, it's actually for the people. And also then that right to vote that is infringed is now maybe not infringed, but diluted. Because again, like it's not like now where it's parties gaming for power. The way they were thinking about it was the different individual states gaming for power, right? So like, I don't necessarily know if the punishment is the right punishment for the crime. I think maybe we should find a different way.
Yes, and Jared, if he were here, would caution me to say that there's nothing in the text of the amendment itself that says a state will lose representation. All it says is that you'll reduce the population of the state, and then when you do your complicated algorithm to figure out the representation, maybe the state will lose a representative, but maybe not. It all depends on how the math works out. The punishment in the Constitution is just that you cut the state's population before you do the allocation.
Okay, all right, that was my mistake then. Go ahead, Roger.
Oh no, it's covered.
Oh, all right. So, Todd, I don't know if you know this, but we ask this question all the time, why 435? And kind of what you were talking about there with the apportionment and moving around. Those are words that we use a lot on this show. And we were at Principles First this weekend, and we were asking that question to people there. We had a great weekend, and just wanted to kind of share with our fans a little bit about what we were doing there. We had a table set up. We were asking people and thinkers as well as why 435. Why do we have 435 representatives? And we're sharing the No Cap mission, which is to repeal and replace the Permanent Apportionment Act by 2030, the next census. That way, Congress will do their job, write a new apportionment bill, and expand the House, giving representation to everyday Americans like me and you. So, Walter, Roger, First, you had a good time, right?
Yes.
All right, it was a very good time. And two, what was your favorite moment of the weekend?
Breakfast. Duh. I mean, that's my favorite part of every day. What the hell?
Oh my goodness. I'm talking about the trade show we were, the event we were at, Roger.
You said the day. You didn't say the day.
Oh, I said the weekend. I'm talking
Okay.
about the event.
I'll think on it. Let Walter go first.
When Chuck Todd came up and said, I am obsessed with
Yes.
this idea.
That was pretty cool. Roger, is that you're going to steal that, or you have a different favorite moment?
No, that was not my favorite. It wasn't a moment. It was every time I got to stand in front of somebody who stood still and listened to me talk about this issue. This is what gets me out of bed in the morning, is the opportunity to talk to somebody about this at the grocery store, on the Amtrak, wherever somebody opens the door in any way, they make a complaint about government, even if it's local government. Speaking about government, that the opportunity to have so many people all at once come through and give me whatever 3, 5, 7 minutes, it was awesome. It was kind of energizing. You guys know I'm not all about that. I'm not a salesman. I'm not a type A. I don't generally enjoy so much things like what we did this past weekend, but I found this one energizing, probably because of the subject matter of what we were just talking about. It's
Yeah,
that important to me.
it was a lot of fun, and you're right. People were really engaged. That's what I loved about this. Every once in a while, you'll get a detractor that'll be like, "This is too complicated. Nobody can understand it," and I just find that is kind of lazy. Like it's actually not that complicated. Regular people do understand this. They understand. People understand when their power has been stripped from them. Like they get that. They understand the polarization that's around, and we definitely saw it today. And I would say it was a great group of people too. Just nice, pleasant. Nobody's really arguing, asking good questions. Which, by the way, I got to put together an FAQ document for our grassroots leaders, and I just took all the questions that I was asked this weekend and put them down, and just it was really helpful. And we were, to prove the point of like it's not really that complicated. We signed up this week alone. We signed up 47 new signers to the Declaration of Representation, and most of them, a good chunk of them, were from Principles First. People that had never heard of this idea, and within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever they gave Roger to tell them the spiel, they were like, "I'm in on this," right? And that was pretty cool. Was there a particular question that you guys were asked that you were like, "This is a great question. We really need to hone in on this one"? No.
Well,
No,
while
good question.
Walter's thinking about that, I'll say one more favorite thing about the weekend was having conversations so many times gives you the opportunity to sharpen your message, right? It's almost like a politician running for office is doing these speeches, seeing what works. We're sharpening the message. And not only that, we're cross-pollinating, right? I have my message, Jeff has his message, Walter has his, but at various times I'm standing next to Walter and I'm hearing him talk about something that I might not otherwise have it chose to include that day. So, we're getting that cross. There was one thing Jeff likes to talk about. I think I pointed out a way that he can strengthen that message as well, just because I happened to be listening to it and had a thought.
I think my favorite question was, isn't this too hard to understand? Right? They're trying to defeat you, and it's just, and my retort, or one of our retorts is, look, it's about a teacher-to-student ratio. You take somebody of average intelligence who's been to even some school. Would you rather be in a classroom with 5,000 people, or 400, or 200, or 20, or 2? And I think different people might have different preferences, but most people are going to land somewhere in the middle. They don't really, and teachers too. I think the same question can be asked of teachers, and it is a it was good to see their faces kind of click. They would come at me like, nobody's gonna understand this. I'm like, well, does the average person understand a student to teacher ratio? And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. And just to see people testing us with so many good questions.
Sharpens
But
the
yeah, that was
message.
it sharpens the message. But that was my favorite one, right? Like this is too hard to understand. Because I think that's one that I've wrestled with the most. I think that I also have, it is kind of hard to understand. And Todd, I'm sure you've wrestled with this, right? Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, kind of hard to understand, right?
Yep.
You got to read it a couple times. And even then,
Yes, it may be harder to understand than increasing the size of the house. I haven't tried to explain that one, but
I'm okay with that. My favorite part was when somebody would use one of our analogies, but we haven't actually like told them it yet. Like they just figured it out on their own. You're explaining it to them, and they're like, "Oh, we were talking to Wendy. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I remember it was Wendy, and I was explaining it to her, and Alvarez, and she was like, "Oh, it's like." If you have a business and you build a second building, right? And you got 100 employees in there, and you've got the manager in the other building. Like, are you going to hire another manager to represent these employees or not? I'm like, yeah, kind of makes sense, right? You increase the number of people, you need more representatives. So Todd, let me ask you this: do you support representative democracy or not? Because the issue is black and white.
I do. I'm in favor of increasing the size of the house. I think, we're obviously having a crisis of democracy, and the answers are going to be, we have to go all in. It's not going to be by itself Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, or by itself increasing the size of the house, or ranked choice voting, or multi-member districts, or whatever is your particular issue. I think it's more of an all of the above approach, because we've gotten so to the point where the federal government is dysfunctional in many ways, and so there's not a single tweak I think that I would make to it. I think it's multiple things. Maybe they don't all work, but you reach a point like what they did after the Civil War, obviously a huge rupture in the constitutional order, and it inspired more constitutional change than we'd had since the founding of the nation. And I think we're not hopefully reaching that much of a rupture here, but we're having some ruptures, and so I think there's an opportunity again to make some changes, significant changes.
We should take a page out of Trump's book and tell people we need to make this change. What do you have to lose? Apparently, Americans are okay with that. You say, I want to do this wild thing. What have you got to lose? Look, come on, let's go. They'll agree. They'll do it.
Yeah, I think, Todd, I think you're right. I mean, there is no one thing that's going to fix all of our problems. But there are things that we can do one by one to start fixing our problems, right? It's like you've got a car, you forgot about it, you left it in a swamp somewhere, and it's been sitting for a week, right? It's got a little water damage, you've got some other issues to it, maybe the tire's flat. You're not going to be able to just drive it immediately. You got a lot of work you got to put in. You got to start somewhere. Yuval Levin believes that this is actually where we start, is by uncapping the House is where we start, because, and I think, he didn't make this argument, but this is the way that I see it, is like you're creating more opportunity for people to do things, right? So all of those issues that you just mentioned, which we see them all the time at events like Principles First, and, there are good ideas all around. It creates space for them to get through. It changes the people that are in Congress, which I think is a little part of the problem, which is we've seen people changing in Congress for the past, few years. People are just keep retiring or deciding not to run for re-election because things are so broken. And this kind of opens it up and then can work on some of those reforms. So Todd, let me ask you this. Out of all those other reforms, after uncapping the House, which would be the one that you would want to push, or maybe you get it tied to your uncapped bill? I don't know, but what would it be?
It's a good question. I live in New York City. We have ranked choice voting, and I think it's worked pretty well in our local elections. It worked exactly as intended, putting aside whether or not you believe in the ideology of the person who actually won, but two people with similar ideologies endorsed each other, and their supporters came together and made sure that one of them won. And that is the whole idea. And of course, it changes the incentives about negative campaigning, and it ensures that 50% of the voters will at least be okay with the result. So, I think what you're talking about with uncapping the House and getting more people involved, put that together with ranked choice voting, where the person who wins has some, you can say, legitimate majority support from the voters. I think those two together might be pretty powerful.
And we avoid runoffs, time,
Yes.
effort, and acrimony. We avoid all that by having instant runoff. Ranked choice voting, star voting, whatever. Any of those that avoid runoff elections, I'm for it.
So, one other thing that we did this week is we released our first educational YouTube video. It was put together by one of our newest board members, Matt Beat. And we don't have a huge X following. We're still kind of growing our YouTube followers, but so far we've got over 5,000 views, over 400 likes, over 70 mostly positive comments. And we've actually gained, I think, 40 subscribers just in the last week since adding that video. And if you're listening out there and you haven't seen the video, go to our YouTube channel at Uncap the House and check it out. It's fantastic. Matt Beat is talking to Matt Beat, or I guess Matt Beat is talking to Mr. Beat. Or maybe it's Beatmaster Beat talking to Mr. Beat. I don't know. But he's got his dual persona, and he's asking a whole bunch of questions about apportionment and why we need to uncap the House. It's quite entertaining. So definitely check that out. What did you guys think of the video? Roger, Walter?
It was classic Mr. Beat. It was some his cadence and style are not unique, but they're noticeable. It was classic him, and a couple of irreverent comments along the way. Yeah, it's classic. I liked it.
Yeah, it was great. It's getting the job done, and Todd, have you seen it?
I haven't.
Okay, well, you can go check it out with some of the viewers, and you can let us know what you think after the show, and if you've got any pointers, since you're also in making video productions.
Yeah, my favorite part is the fact that he it's like he's two different people. His entire persona changes from camera shift to camera shift. It's kind of like I have twins, right? And they look the same to everybody else, but to me they look differently because I can see their personality, right? and it's kind of like that. Like, he has this completely different persona, and he would be a great actor. Like he was a middle school teacher, and now he's a YouTuber, and I don't know, I think if he wants to, he could probably be a pretty darn good actor, if he ever gets the opportunity. I don't know.
Right to arrange his music too. He's written a song about all of our presidents.
Yes, that is true. Those are fantastic. And Todd makes great documentary. You know what? Todd should do a documentary about Mr. Beat. His story is really cool, and he's a great person, great thing. And it's history. And you know what? Mr. Beat is doing I think he's doing something about trying to uncap the House. So I don't know. Just sounds interesting.
As soon as I finish this one.
Just think it out loud.
Yeah, we have lots of ideas that we expect everybody else to go do. You put the work in. Okay. Well, this has been really great, Todd. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We had a great weekend at Principals First. That was fantastic, and we've got a lot of energy going on. One thing I didn't mention earlier is we've got our grassroots chapter started up. We had our first grassroots leadership meeting last week. It was fantastic. I think it's the only meeting I've ever thrown in my life where everybody showed up and everybody showed up on time. It was a miracle. I loved it, and I hope that continues. Well, let's go around the horn here and just some final words, comments, leave for the viewers. Todd, you want to start us off, or you want me to pick one of these other guys first?
I'm happy to start. Thanks again for having me on. It's a fun conversation, And again, the website for the film is 14section2film.com. If you haven't seen the trailer and you'd like to, it's there, and other information about the film. And I should also say, although it's not done yet, I have done some work in progress events with various organizations, sometimes with lawyers for CLE credit, sometimes with other organizations that are just interested in democracy issues. So if anyone listening is with an organization like that or would like to do a program like that, feel free to reach out to me, which you can do through the website, or just email me at Todd at Todd at law-democracy-film.com. It was difficult to figure out what the .com should be for that one, but would love to keep getting the word out about this film and do some work in progress events with people who are interested.
So, and just for myself, one more time, what's the email address?
It is Todd at law-democracy-film.com.
All right, perfect. Thank you. I guess my final thoughts are we had a great time this weekend. I just got done spending a little time with a Senate Hill staffer today, and I'm hopeful that we can get something done before 2030. I think that the energy is there in this city. Finally, everyone is fed up, and by everyone I mean almost everyone in Congress is and their staffers and everyone is walking around with a frown, which is very sad. But someday they are going to uncap the House, and every day we get a little bit closer to that. And very excited to have you all join us. And thank you again to Jeff, who put together all the amazing merch. You should go check out our website, because we have amazing merch on the website for sale. And if there's something that you've seen us wearing and you're like, I want that, and it's not on the website, you can email me at y435.org, and I will make sure that work gets taken care of, and we get you the beautiful thing that you would like to have in your life, which is the question, probably, why 435? It's a great conversation starter, and our shirts have the website on it. So as just always says, if you don't want to answer the question, you can just point them to the website, and they can come talk to us, and we'd be happy to shoulder that burden for you. So we're going to be sending Todd a shirt. We'd love to get you a shirt. So please go to the website and check out that store, or shoot me an email, w@y435.org. Over to you, Roger.
Yeah, that Drover's hat you were wearing this weekend, is that on this? Is that in the merch store? Can we get one of those?
This guy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we need to embroider it. It would
Yeah,
have
we
to
need
be
to
for like
brand that.
big donations, maybe. Yeah, I like that.
No, I want to thank Todd for coming on as well. Read up on you today and have looked at your IMDb. One of your you've done other documentaries in the past. You're a documentarian, right? So I'm interested in My Name is Alan and I Paint Pictures. I'm going to go watch that. So you'll have a new.
Oh, if you can find it, good luck. Yeah, I was the editor on that one. I didn't direct it a long time ago, but interesting story about an outsider artist trying to make his way in New York, and it was like 2005 or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
it listed you as editor, but then there was a separate bar that was a directors. I clicked on that, and of the other films that were listed as editor, there were two that showed you as director. So I clicked on one. It's My Name is Alan. But you're
Yeah.
right. When I look at that resulting screen, it shows Johnny Boston.
yes, that was the director.
Sounds like a porn name, but okay.
Yeah, I didn't edit any of those films.
Okay. Did they edit those? Yeah, maybe they did.
What's your prior film? The one that was on PBS. What's that one called?
That is called The Campaign of Miner Bow, and that it was about a unemployed coal miner in West Virginia who got 15 minutes of fame when he met Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign, and he subsequently ran for U.S. Senate. And the story is about campaign, but also about his life and the area in West Virginia, coal country West Virginia. Pretty interesting character in film.
I'll watch that one too. But regardless of who directed it, I'm interested in My Name Is Alan now. I
All
have
right,
two
well,
children.
let me know if you find it because I don't know where it is.
That's going to be the trick. I have two children that are artists, by training. So I'm always interested in anything about how an artist thinks or becomes an artist.
We're all artists. Yeah.
Bullshit
So
artists.
well, that's why we're doing this, right? So thank you, Todd, for being on the show tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you all of the people at Peace Principles First, all of the new declaration signers, all the people that have watched our YouTube video, liked it, and even shared it. We really do appreciate it. Remember, this issue is pretty simple. It's black and white. You're either for representative democracy or you're not. And I think that once you understand what representative democracy is and how much power, flexibility, and safety it gives you, you'll be for it. So you can go to our website, www.y435.org, to learn more. You can sign that declaration that I just mentioned. You can sign up to volunteer, become one of our grassroots leaders, or you can make a donation because, as Mark Hanna said, the most important thing in politics is money, and I can't remember the second thing. So we do appreciate it. I butchered that quote, but it's something like that. Peace
Something like
Yeah, I
and
thought
love.
that's what he said. He
and
couldn't remember the second thing.
Well, yeah. Peace, love, and representation.
Representation.
Todd,
Ciao.
hang with me just for a minute here.